You're listening to a download from the outdoorstation.co.uk. Number 593.
Welcome back, adventurers, to the Outdoors Station. In part 1, we pedalled through Europe with Ken and Marie from Norway to North Africa. But now the wheels hit the real road, Africa. In part 2 of our Cape to Cape special, we dive deep into the continent that challenged, inspired, and forever changed these two humble explorers. We're talking Saharan sunrises, rainforest roads, endless acts of generosity, and cultures so rich they'll leave you rethinking your entire world view. This is a story of endurance, emotion, and radical openness. Because when you travel slowly, you don't just pass through places, you become part of them. Let's rejoin my conversation with Ken and Marie and see where their story takes us. You have experience, obviously, doing these cycle trips, going through different countries, and I do admire your willingness to accept invitations, because that's usually the first thing that makes people worried about what might happen to them, etc. But you're obviously experienced enough to trust your gut and go with something if it's offered to you. But was there anything particularly, as you came through Mauritania, presumably down to Senegal, is there anything particularly that took you by surprise?
I think we had one cool experience. Oh, we had many, but we had a special one in Mauritania. So we wanted to go and see the Eye of Sahara. It's like a geological phenomenon, and we could cycle to a small place called Odan, and from there we had to go with a pickup truck through the sand to this Eye of the Sahara. And we were at a guest house, and we asked the lady there if we could. If you knew someone that could drive us there. And she was like, yeah, I can find out, or like I can manage. And we agreed on the price and we paid. And then, she was just like, are you ready? And we were like, yeah, we're ready. But where's the driver? And she was like, that's me. And then she just jumped in the car and drove us to this amazing place. And it's really difficult driving. And that was just very, very special in Mauritania, because you definitely see that the females, the women there are more at home and not so strong represented in that way. And to drive a car out there, and that was really special. So it was cool to experience.
Tell us more then. Where did you go from Mauritania?
So from Mauritania, we came into Senegal, and so we were at the border of the Senegal River, or the bank of the Senegal River, and we crossed with a small wooden canoe, and then we entered the I don't know what you call it in England, but in Denmark it would be okay to say the Black Africa. So I hope I'm not offending anybody, but that was where the culture changed from Arabic to the black population, and that was quite a really great change of scenery. Not because we were fed up with the Arabic part of Africa, that was really special and a great experience, but in the black part of Africa, there is just so much more going on. It's a wild place. People dress very differently. So the Arabic part is more strict in terms of religion and so on, and the way they dress. And as soon as we crossed the border into Senegal, people dress like they do here in the middle of Copenhagen almost. Like they were so modern in a way, still with secondhand clothes mostly, but just they were just so chic in a way, and we were very from the first day we loved it. And then we decided from the border we wanted to cycle on the N7 road, which sounds like a main road, but it's actually just a dirt track in the middle of nowhere through the country. And so already I think the second day in Senegal, we were just in the middle of nowhere with only small, tiny villages. I would say every 50 kilometers or so. And every time we cycled into a village, the whole village would come running and, greeting us and offering water as the first thing. That's the tradition, that you offer water to the travelers. And then they would ask us to stay, and they would ask us to eat and relax in the shade and so on. And it was really heartwarming to feel that the hospitality, but also the way that people wanted to engage with us. It was really, really heartwarming. One night we slept just in the middle of a village. They said that, you're so welcome to stay here. And they had like a small wooden bench just in the middle of the city or village. So just next to the main road. And at night they would put like 2 wooden bars in front of the bed or the wooden bench that we were sleeping in. They would put 2 wooden bars so that the cows wouldn't come to us. So we would have all night. We would have the cows and the donkeys walking past, and it was just a really great experience. In the morning, we could kind of smell the fires going, and they would cook breakfast for everybody. And it was such a nice experience. And it's funny when you're in a different part of the world where you really don't belong, but you feel like you really belong. You feel like at the same time you feel very out of place because we're white and everybody was black, and we don't speak the language and so on. But everybody made it so easy for us to be there and be part of the community.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. It sounds like coming out of Mauritania into Senegal. It was just like perhaps a more stricter Muslim lifestyle into a more free-flowing lifestyle, perhaps. Certainly the way you describe it certainly sounds that way, as if there's more colour or more music or more freedom. Everybody's going to be thinking as we're having this conversation, were you apprehensive? Were you ever worried when you were camping at night that the bikes would disappear, or, your tent would be attacked in some way, particularly in these remote places?
I actually think that the more remote it is, the more we felt safe. I think it's, for us anyways, because we often try to go as far away as we can from the main road. It seems like people are curious and they take care of us. And that's also why we often ask if it's okay to camp here, because then we know that it's allowed. And and I think we never camp somewhere where we don't feel safe. So that's another thing also.
Yeah. I would say that we got attacked quite a lot in the tent, but that was mostly by ants or termites.
Well, yes, we'll certainly come on to the negatives perhaps a bit later on, the bugs and goodness knows what else. So it sounds wonderful. I mean, I could keep talking to you for hours, and I'm just thinking we've only halfway down Africa. We haven't really got to got to the bottom.
It's a long way.
It is. So in your own words, then, just quickly, which sort of countries did you go through, and do you have any particular stories that stick in your mind? I know you didn't have a great experience in Liberia. Perhaps that's something worth talking about, but for the rest of the countries, do tell us more.
Well, now that you mentioned Liberia, that was actually one of our favorite countries, even though there was an incident that Marie might want to tell about. But Liberia was a really great country. It's a funny country in a way, because it's a country that was made because the U.S. was, when they liberated the slaves in the U.S., they were afraid that they would create chaos. So they wanted to send most of them back to Africa. But it was, it was a big thing to do because the slaves were from all over the place. So what the U.S. decided to do was to create a new country and call it Liberia, and send the freed slaves back to Liberia. So what they effectively did was they took land from somebody else again, and then they created this country and they sent the slaves back there. So that means that Liberia has, it's a funny state because it has a lot of similarities to the American system, but still it's an African country. So, and we kind of found that quite interesting and quite fun. And then people were really, really funny and friendly, and again, very, very welcoming all the time. In Liberia, we chose to ride through the jungle. And even though some of the locals said, no, 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 don't do it. The jungle is too dangerous and it will eat you. And, we still decided to do it. And it was one of the best experiences of the whole trip. The jungle is just so dense and it's so warm and so humid in there. And you only see this green wall on both sides of the road. And there is no air in there. So you sweat and you sweat and you sweat all day and all night. But whenever you come across people, they're just really, really friendly. So we had amazing experiences in there. We came across a village where we asked if it was okay to spend the night, if we could pitch the tent. And, in the end, they told us, yeah, you can pitch the tent. But then we found out that they didn't really mean it, because it was a bit odd for them that two white people were sleeping in the middle of the village in a tent. So they told us, it's way better if you sleep with one of the elders. So they invited us in to stay in their house, and actually we got the elders' bed to sleep in for the night. But what was really funny was that the whole village came together for a ritual to welcome us. And the way they do that is they have a small nut called a cola nut, which I learned is the nut that they use for making Coca-Cola back in the old days. So they kind of break it apart, and then they give it to everybody who wants a little piece, and they give the nut to us, and it's very, very bitter. So normally you would drink some water to kind of wash it down, but what they do, of course, is that they drink palm wine. So within the first half hour we were there, we were almost half drunk, because the palm wine is so strong. And then when they wanted to move us into the elder's house, they started the ritual all over again. So within the first 2 hours, we had a lot of palm wine. But it was really fun, and it was such a good experience. And the next morning, they didn't want us to leave. They said, no, we're preparing breakfast for you. And when we were served the breakfast, it was like a fish soup, and they had the same morning they went to the river that was really close by, and they picked snails that they put in the soup. And the way you eat the snails is that you pick them up and then you kind of suck the soft snail out of the shell like this. And I had a few, and they were quite good and a little bit of crunchy because of all the sand. But I don't know, how many did you eat?
Oh, let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
So
it
certainly,
was such a good experience. Yeah.
Africa, and certainly all the different cultures, there's so many different rituals that smaller places, particularly remote places, will adhere to, and it's very, very difficult, isn't it, as a white European traveller, to know whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. If you're accepting, they get very offended if you don't accept their hospitality, and they get offended if you don't finish the plate of food or whatever. So did you have any ideas of what was expected of you as a visitor when you went through these places, or did you just ask?
I think we just asked and tried to fit in and tried to figure out what was the right thing to do. We also tried to read a little bit ahead, but mostly we just tried to figure it out when we were there.
But I would say it's funny because as you said, in some places people would get a little bit offended if you don't follow the rules. But in Africa, that is not my experience. People are very friendly, and even though you don't know what to do and you do everything wrong, they're just still so respectful and polite, and they will help you in the softest and nicest way possible. They will get you in the right direction, kind of. So I think that's a thing that really describes the people we met in Africa very well, is that they're very soft and very gentle, but also very respectful and polite, and it creates such a nice atmosphere to be around people in that sense, and it makes it very easy to travel there.
Yeah, that sounds great. But of course, I do know that reading your blog, Marie did have a little bit of a problem at one particular day, which I'd like to touch on. But there's also an aspect of this as well, because recently I was traveling with my wife over in Cambodia and Vietnam, and we were frustrated that technology these days plays such a big part in our traveling lives. And even though we weren't traveling in the same way that you were doing on this trip, it was still the same principle. Everything's on the phone. All your details are backed up here, there, or everywhere. And you spend a lot of time worrying about a bit of technology, which years ago when we were traveling, you didn't have to worry about. So this story that you're going to tell us, Marie, obviously, has a greater impact than just the physical items.
Definitely. So what happened was that we were going to Monrovia in Liberia, and that's the capital of Monrovia. And it was a Sunday, so it was actually very quiet in this part of the city. And we had just been doing some groceries, and we were actually just going like 800 meters down the road to another place where we wanted to go. Therefore, I have like a small bag in front of my bike, where this bag is always sitting, and it has everything. So my passport, I have the camera, my phone, some extra money, because I got this bag with my life. But because we were going such a short distance, I had just swung it over my shoulder, but like across my shoulder. So, I was thinking that was safe. But then a bike, or like a motorbike came and just, pulled off the bag from my back. And I actually thought he had a knife, because I was like, how is that even possible? Like just, riding next to me on his motorcycle and taking the bag and then disappearing. And then Kenneth was ahead of me, so he saw it because he could see the red strap from the bag. We tried to follow him, but yeah, no luck. And that was actually what we talked with some of the locals about afterwards, that Sunday is the worst day, because normally there is so much traffic jam that they cannot get away. But here, they could just take off. Yeah. So we went to the police, and, it was all about like, we don't have a printer. You have to come back the next day. And yeah. And then the next day we went to the Danish consulate. But he had just left for vacation for 3 weeks. So I didn't really have any possibilities, because the only thing they could do, for instance, with my passport, was to give me a passport to go home. So I couldn't continue my journey because I had all the visas in my passport, and yeah, we still had so far. So I was really depressed, and I was like, what to do? My phone, as you said, was gone with everything, and the camera, and yeah, everything. But then the Danish consulate, he was really cool. He said, I have a woman, she can help you, and she's called Mama Sheriff. Just that name is amazing. So we met with her in front of the national police, and then, she just opened the door into there, and we walked in, and yeah, we talked to the detectives in there, and yeah, they got all started the research, and they were saying, like, we'll get the bag back for you. And I was like, yeah, sure. I just wanted the piece of paper, so I could show that to my insurance company and move on. I was already planning like, okay, how can I go home, get a new passport, come back? Is there any other ways to do this? And yeah, so. And we also had some other people helping us, actually, local people. And it was just actually amazing again to feel that community spirit, that from her and from some other people we had met in Monrovia. And then the next day we came back to the police station, and we were standing outside. And then Kenneth, he was just pointing at the guy and running towards him. And then he was actually walking there with my bag over his shoulder. But he was a police guy. So they actually got my bag back, and that's quite amazing. And yeah, the passport was in there, the camera and the phone, but everything else they had sold. Like even the cover for my phone was not there. So yeah, but what we also found out afterwards is that Monrovia is #1 city in the world for petty crime, yeah. So yeah, and we didn't knew that. So afterwards, we could see how local people, they were wearing their bags, in front of them, and maybe having a T-shirt over it, and no one talking on the phone on the streets and so on. So yeah, we learned it the hard way. but it was just amazing that we got it back. I'm so impressed.
And that the Mama Sheriff, when I read your piece on the blog there, she sounds like a real fixer, doesn't she? You don't mess with Mama Sheriff.
No, just when you saw her, in this beautiful dress and like big golden earrings and just like, I'll get this done, and just walked in there and like opened the door. It was just like, wow. Yeah, she was amazing.
It'd be also worth mentioning it did cost a few pounds or a few dollars or whatever in bribes to oil the machine, but it didn't cost you that much compared to what you lost, certainly.
No, exactly. And we were just so happy that we couldn't continue our travels. I think that was the most important part. Yeah.
I just wanted to say the biggest problem with that was that the visas are very hard to get in most part of Africa. And so in Marie's passport, there were like 3 visas that we had obtained in different countries before coming to Liberia. And there is no way that you can get those visas back home in Denmark. So the real problem was how to get through the next couple of countries without that passport, because that would have been almost impossible without going back to the embassies in the countries before that. So luckily we didn't have to do that.
And did you, again, just a practical question really, did you back everything up to the cloud, as it were, as you were traveling when you had a signal, your photographs and all your visas and copies of everything?
Definitely our photographs. So there was only a few days or something like that we didn't have for the photos. But actually, I hadn't thought about it with the visas. I hadn't even taken a picture of them in the passport. So from now on, I'll do that every time. I just thought it was not really a possibility to lose my bag, I guess, after all these kilometers around the world. But I guess it is. So always, do some backup.
A happy ending considering the circumstances. So do keep going now. Where did you get to after Liberia? Did you presumably Ghana and then down to Congo? Did you go down through the Congo?
Yeah, so briefly after Liberia, it's Ivory Coast, Ghana, it's Togo, Benin, and Nigeria, and then we come through Cameroon and then Congo. So yeah, there are a lot of smaller countries on that stretch that some of them are a bit similar, but still very different in a way. So when we came down to Congo, that is when things really started to change again, or maybe even Cameroon. I think around Togo, Benin, Nigeria, we got a sense of voodoo as well, which was quite interesting. But in Cameroon as well, we stayed with a guy for a few weeks in Cameroon, and he took us around. He was what was he, like an officer of the local prison, and he took us to see the prison. He told us that inside the prison there were a few people arrested for selling body parts, which is an interesting phenomenon, but it's something to do with the voodoo. So actually people in Nigeria, Cameroon, around those countries, some people live off of killing people and selling their body parts. And that was quite a shock to us to learn about that. But that's the darker side of voodoo, I would say. The positive side of voodoo in those countries is that people use it as an everyday phenomenon to kind of gain good things. For example, if you want a girl to fall in love with you, you could use voodoo for that, even though you're already a Christian or a Muslim. But that was quite interesting to dive into. But Congo was a wild place.
I read, I think somewhere on your blog, you said that the Cameroon gave you feelings of the rich were very, very rich and the poor were very humble, but they still offered you everything.
Yeah, that is true. In Cameroon, we cycled very deep into the jungle and visited the Baka people. That is one of the oldest indigenous people, but they were really having a hard time because the jungle is exploited by forests. Thank you so much. Yeah, and mining, and also luckily, I mean, it's very good that WWF, they have made some national parks in there, but then the Baka people are not allowed to be in the national parks, and they live off the forest. So they live off the animals, of the plants. They know so much about the plants and everything, but they're really, really suppressed, and it's difficult for them to make a living. So in a way, we were so fascinated by these people. They have lived here for so many years, thousands of years, and now to see them not really integrated in the modern world, but also it's not possible for them to live like they have always done. So that was a really sad, actually, to see.
One thing I picked up from your equipment list that you took either an iPad or a mini iPad or something similar with you. Did you find, first of all, did it work when you went through these areas? And what was the reaction of the local people when they saw that? Was it something they'd experienced before?
Actually, we brought the iPad or mini iPad for the Argentina to Alaska trip, but we didn't bring it to Africa, actually. For Africa, we only had a phone each and our camera, and then a GPS for the computer. But it was actually surprising to see how many people that had a cell phone in Africa as well. So not here in the Baka people, but everywhere else, a lot of people had a phone.
Fun fact is that actually it's very easy to pay with your phone in Africa. A lot of the systems where you can pay with your phone is created in different parts of Africa, because it's just the perfect market for those kind of solutions, because the banks are so few and far between, so it's very difficult for ordinary people to get access to a bank. So they created in all of the countries we went through, they had quite good systems where you could pay with your phone and you could transfer money with your phone. We brought our Visa card and withdrew money in ATMs, as we often or most often do. But we heard about other cyclists that would just bring their phone and then they would walk up to somebody on the street and say, "Hey, can I transfer, $20 to you? And then you give me $20 in cash." And that would work all the way through Africa.
Well, I mean, again, time is ticking by here.
Yeah.
We're getting close now to Namibia and the end of your journey, I trust. So let's just talk about the end, and we'll just talk about a few details after that.
So it was amazing to cycle through Namibia. It's a beautiful country if you love nature, and it was such a big contrast to West Africa, because it's the country with the second least populated country. So it was so quiet during the night, from hearing the noises from the jungle or the small villages or so on. It was just completely quiet. It was a fun contrast as well. So I think that's a really cool thing about this trip. It had so many different parts and so many contrasts.
But maybe people don't know, but West Africa is all about the people, both because they're really nice, but also because there are a lot of people everywhere. So when we came to Namibia, as Marie said, it was just dead quiet.
Yeah. And here again, we actually were inspired by a bikepacking route. It's called San. It's possible to find it on the bikepackers.dk site, and it's really amazing. It's almost 5,000 kilometers in remote areas, and it takes you a little bit inland, but also to the coast. And we can really recommend that. It's a very tough route. It's super tough, but it's also very rewarding.
And super beautiful. It's a lot of desert riding and a lot of remote riding, so you really have to plan your water carefully. Also because it's super hot. So there was one day where I drank 15 liters of water in just one day. And Marie wanted to find a snack in her bag. So she pulled out a small bag of gummy bears. And when she opened it, it was all fluid. So we had to eat the gummy bears with a spoon. So it was that hot. But still, it was really amazing and very beautiful riding. Again, we met an indigenous people there called Himba. And they're super beautiful. They dressed, especially the women, dressed with a lot of jewelry, and they put some red paste in their hair, so they have almost like dreadlocks, but it is like one thick paste. So it's super beautiful, and then they're almost naked, and it's really fun because they're not like the Baka people that are not really integrated into modern society. Himba people are very integrated. So when you go to the supermarket, you will see Himba people walking around the supermarket in their really beautiful traditional clothing. So it's a nice thing to see in Namibia, that there can also be like good integration between traditional people and modern society.
Yeah. So from there, we went further on to South Africa. And that was again a big change because suddenly there were big supermarkets and you could have all kinds of food. So yeah, that was a big change again. And then we continued down to Cape of Good Hope. That was our destination for this journey. And that was very, very special. I mean, when you put down the bikes at the sign saying Cape of Good Hope, and you are there, and yeah, now your dream is a reality, and you think back of all the experiences we have had along the way, because I guess it's like that for most travelers. It's not really about the destination, it's about all the experience since going there. But again, it was very special. Yeah.
And emotionally wise, how were you feeling that last few days, that last week, because you were winding down and coming to the end of what, a year and a half of cycling?
Yeah, a year and a half on the road. It was actually mixed emotions, I would say, because on a trip like that, I at least I felt like I didn't want to go home. I could continue, I could continue up through East Africa or whatever. I really love cycling and I love that way of living. Very simple, only with what you have on the bike and meeting people all the time, engaging in different communities and learning new things every day. I really love that lifestyle. But at the same time, it's I have to say that the cycling in Africa, especially West Africa, was also very tough and very demanding. First of all, because we did some really remote cycling that was really challenging, but also because of the nutrition available in Africa for us when we were cycling. It was very difficult. So I actually lost 12 kilos and my immune system was very, very low. So I was prone to get sick a lot. And so in that sense, I was really tired, and I think Marie too. And even though we were in good mood, I think we also needed to take a long break and check back into friends and family at that point. Yeah, so definitely mixed emotions.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a fantastic story, and we'll finish off with a few little questions if we may now. But I would recommend that people visit your website, bikepackers.dk, and read more about the trip and obviously your list of equipment and all the various things you've put there that would give people a more detailed description of what you've been through and where you've been, and as you say, the highs and lows as well, because it does bring home a bit of reality, doesn't it, when you're actually really, really poorly in a place that doesn't have great facilities and you suddenly realise just how alone you can be. And certainly, unfortunately, we had something very similar on our last trip as well, which suddenly made you think, next time I'll be more prepared for that one. So, what did I say? 30,000 kilometres. You're both freelancers, as I probably explained at the very beginning of this podcast. You're both freelancers, so thankfully you can sort of hopefully pick and choose your work. So you saved hard for this particular trip. But could you just give us an idea of what the actual cost of 18 months was, and roughly if you have an idea in your head about what your daily budget must have been in Europe compared to in Africa?
Oh, I don't know if we can compare Europe to Africa. I'm not so sure about that one, but I know that we spend more or less on average 150 kroner per person per day, which is 20 euros.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more on this trip, but it's more or less like that. And we don't stay in hotels that much, but you do need to stay in hotels sometimes. The thing is that especially in West Africa, which is the bigger part of the trip, it's not easy to buy a lot of luxury items. So you don't have to worry too much about that. But when you do get access to goods that are brought in from the outside world, they will be super expensive. So you have to choose kind of, do I need a little bit of luxury and am I willing to pay for it? But for us, just to say that, your average budget can vary a lot. But for us, it was around 20 euros per person per day. on the whole trip.
On the whole trip, that which is pretty reasonable, wasn't it? So presumably, once again, you're back to work now and saving hard for your next adventure, whatever that may be.
Yeah, we haven't really decided yet, actually. I think we have a lot of dreams where we would like to go. I really want to visit Mongolia, so I hope that will be possible, maybe for an extended summer vacation.
Okay, so just a quick couple of questions then. Just roughly, what was your best piece of equipment and your worst piece of equipment?
That is a good question, and we should be able to answer that very fast.
Okay, maybe not the best, but I was really happy that I brought a dynamo hub on my bike, and with the dynamo hub there is a charger, a USB charger, so that I can charge my battery bank and my GPS, and that worked really well. I was super impressed. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It only demands less than 1 watt, so you don't even feel it when pedaling, and that worked super well the whole way. I'm really impressed with that system.
And I think I can answer the worst equipment for me, and it's nothing to do with the equipment. It's just for the need I had. So I actually started out with a little bit of a more slim tire because we were thinking that then I could be faster on the road to keep up with Kenneth. But the problem was that we love like the hard terrain and the difficult terrain, and we also rode quite a lot of sand. So it was actually too skinny. The tire for what I needed. So the tire was super strong, and after like 30,000 kilometers, you couldn't almost see that I have used it, but it was not what I needed for this trip. So I actually changed that, and I was really happy I did that.
Okay, so not so much of a failure, just a poor choice for that particular time, sure. And obviously there's a full list of all the equipment and things you've taken on all your trips, so do have a look at their website, folks. But the one thing that has occurred to me, presumably you just mentioned it, I think, your mapping, did you, and security, did you have like a spot system or something so you could send messages back home to say, hey, I'm okay and this is where I am?
Actually, the phone networks works really well in most parts of Africa. So we just had our phones, and we connected with people through WhatsApp, and that was actually quite easy in most places. So we didn't bring a spot tracker. In some countries, I'm not even sure they are allowed. When we cycled in Himalaya before we went on this trip, we know for sure that they are not allowed inside the country. So we did bring one on this one. And in terms of navigation, usually we use our phone to kind of get an idea of the route. But for the first time on this trip, I brought a normal bike computer, like a GPS, to fit on the handlebar. Not to plot the route in there, but just to have the map available at all times. And that worked really well. I was super happy with that.
Fantastic. Well, guys, you've listened to my podcast before, so you know what's coming. Of all the things I could have asked you about your 30,000 18-month-long cycle trip, North Cape to South Cape, what on earth should I have asked you?
That's a good question. Maybe you should have asked us, how many cans of sardines did you eat?
Okay. I don't know what your diet's like. Do you manage to keep a record?
I think we have eaten 200 cans of sardines each because it was really difficult to get the proteins, and it was really difficult to carry food because it was so hot. So we ate as much as we could in the small food stands, but you don't get much meat there. So we always try to eat the sardines, because we could carry them and so on, but I think it will be a while before we can eat sardines again.
The quota for the rest of our lives is.
But maybe one last thing, actually. I really hope that people want to go and explore Africa, because we have so many myths about Africa and so many stories. But I think, go and explore it for yourself and see how amazing this continent is.
Yeah.
30,000 kilometers. 26 countries, 518 days, and countless unforgettable moments. What started with a dream ended with a memory bank bursting at the seams, and more importantly, hearts full of gratitude. Ken and Marie didn't just bike across a continent. They sipped palm wine with strangers, embraced the unexpected, and wove themselves into the rhythm of everyday life across Africa. If their journey teaches us anything, it's that the world is still full of wonder, kindness, and connection, if we're just willing to slow down enough and see it. Of course, you want to know more about them and their list of incredible adventures. So please make sure you check them out on bikepackers.dk. They have promised a book coming soon about this trip, but I very much doubt they will sit down long enough to write it, as the open road is always calling them. My thanks to them for talking with me, and I hope you've enjoyed this epic ride. Until next time, keep your wheels spinning and your hearts open, and bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To hear or see more from our extensive free library, please visit theoutdoorstation.co.uk.